was a farmer.
Oh, really?
A farmer?
A farmer.
A farmer.
Wheat. So I grew up in Northeast Alabama, and my dad had 5,000 acres. And as a little girl, I wasn't able to do any of that. So I couldn't get on the farm. We had a lot of farm employees, all men. I was a young girl, didn't get to do that. I left, went to California for college. My dad got sick with colon cancer, and it was terminal. He flies out to California. We were living right outside San Francisco. He flies out and says, I need you to come home because I have no one to run this farm. And I was like, I'm not a real farm.
Yeah.
Early 20s. Like,
And you didn't grow up doing it. You weren't allowed, yeah.
I grew up around it, but not doing it. And so in less than 24 hours, I quit school, quit my job, and I was on an airplane back to Alabama. And I had 3 days to learn farming before he left for an alternative treatment in Mexico. So back then, it's not like I could just FaceTime him questions. Oh, this was years ago. I had my little notepad. We toured 3 days properties, and properties were all over 2 different counties, right? I mean, it was, and we're going, and it was like, don't forget this field over here. And I'm like, well, he goes, just write down that it's, turn right at the big pecan tree. Mm-hmm. Got it. Okay. Yeah. Now, fast forward a few months, I did actually harvest another farmer's corn because I thought the pecan tree was the wrong pecan tree.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Guy.
Oh, it worked out, okay.
Yeah, he's like, this will be mine. Anyway, so my dad left after my 3 days of extensive training. And he's like, you got 3 rules. Do not drive any machinery because I didn't know how. And, and just make sure you get all this corn out of the ground because, we had to, it's about $1 million of corn that we needed to harvest. And then he's like, and number 3, I need you to make sure you don't climb any grain bins. We had our own granary operation, so you could, we saved the corn because of the market. Basically, if it's low, you want to store your corn till you can sell it at a higher price. All of that. Had to learn all about the farm bills, and it was crazy, the things you got to know as a farmer. But so I'm like, okay, I think I can do the corn thing. Maybe we'll see. But I certainly don't want to drive or operate anything. But what I learned after he left is that the employees, first of all, I'd just come back from California, so I had a little bit of an accent to them, right? And they didn't know me because they hadn't been exposed to me, so they didn't respect me.
Oh.
Figured.
Oh, here comes daddy's little girl type. Yeah, okay.
2 to 3 times my age, right? I'm in my early 20s, got, stars in my eyes, like we're gonna do amazing things together. And they're like, just get away. You can bring us lunch, right? Just go by and get us a sandwich and bring us lunch. And I'm like, oh man, how am I going to change this, right? Like, how do you get them to respect? And I'm like, well, the only way I can do it is if I can actually do what they can do, right? I can't ask them to do things that I wouldn't be willing to do myself. So I learned how to drive a combine, or learned how to operate that. Now, one of the things on the farm you have to understand is that if you're going to operate the equipment, you've got to be able to fix the equipment when it breaks down. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not a great mechanic.
Not so much. Yeah.
So I had the John Deere mechanic on speed dial.
Yeah. Right. That.
Under where and he's walking me through how to change the chain or something.
Look for this, look for that.
He's like, all right, take that off. And I'm like, whoa. And he's like, oh yeah, I forgot that was packed in oil. So it's like, thought we were friends, but whatever. But anyway, I slowly, and this was all over 8 weeks, right? Because so I slowly learned to do certain things. And then I actually hired a female truck driver and learned how to drive an 18-wheeler at night because in that day, I mean, this is 20-something years ago, right? In that day, it wasn't the thing for women to do these things, right? All of my employees were men, so I hired this female truck driver because I needed someone to teach me to do these things. And we had It was a large operation. So we had our own 18-wheelers to haul the grain to the market or to the granary. And so a hurricane was in the Gulf. This is Northeast Alabama. And if that comes up through Alabama, then all my corn is gone, right? You like blows down, is gone. So now my entire family's livelihood is on my back, right? And I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So I'm trying to figure it out quickly over the few weeks. And so I started this. Uh, I learned, I researched on dial-up internet. I researched that you can do corn. You can harvest it overnight or like late into the night, and it doesn't lose its moisture level. Right? A lot of scientific stuff, but like you have to have it at a certain level before you can sell it, right?
Okay.
So it has to be at a certain a low moisture level, and this was all feed corn, right? So things that they would grind up and feed to cows.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Uh, so I'm like, all right, well, we can do 2 shifts, right? And then so I worked out this plan, like we do 2 shifts. The last shift will fill up the trucks because the granary and all would be closed. So that last shift would fill up the trucks. The truck driver comes in 5 a.m. They are just ready to go, right? Well, my first morning shift, the truck driver was supposed to be in early, he did not show up, right? I'm like, oh my God, like this is a pivotal moment right now. Like I can either get in that truck and drive it, right? Because I have not practiced with 100,000 pounds of grain on yet, but I can shift the gears. I think I can do it. I'm like, I can either do that or I can let this guy own me, right? For the next so many weeks until my dad gets home. I can't do that to my family. So I got in, I drove this thing down the mountain. I mean, it was not pretty. It was awful. I could have killed myself, I realize now. But I got it to Tyson and unloaded it, and that truck driver was never late again.
I bet now. Yeah.
So it's those type of things that in my early 20s that I learned from a work ethic. I mean, you can't be later than your employees are to the field, and you have to set the right example. And I didn't know then that I was learning so much.
Yeah.
And
Those experiences.
and then like figuring out like where to push and where to say, okay, well, this is what it needs to be.
Yeah.
Or then like, well, wait a minute, that just doesn't feel right. Yeah, right. We had this one, this was after, so my father ended up passing away. I ran the farm a year by myself and with the farm team, but I was the leader of it. And after my dad passed away, most of his friends and business colleagues were helpful. This one individual where the only place I could sell my soybeans to was not helpful. He wanted to undercut me on the per bushel rate. And I knew because I was now good friends with all the farmers in the area. I mean, I was the largest farmer in that 3-county area. And so I knew what they were being offered and what I was being offered. And, it just really made me mad. And I'm like, I will burn every field. I am not selling it. It can sit there and rot. We will lose everything we have. Don't care. I'm not starting the size person. So I got back up on my dial-up internet again, and I found a grain broker out of Charleston. And I said, I've got all these soybeans. I don't know what to do with them. Like, this is what they're. And he's like, let me just come down. So he drove down the next day. He looked at all my soybeans. He goes, I'll buy them all. He bought them over market, over asking. And I'm like, well, how are you going to get them? He goes, oh, I'll bring a barge down the Tennessee River. And by the way, I'll pay you if you can find any more soybeans for me. I'll pay.
Of course you can.
And I'm like, absolutely. Bring on the contracts. So we completely cut the guy who was trying to
Cut 'em right
undercut
out.
me out. Undercut me. We cut him out of the whole market in that area.
A little.
But that's the things you learn over time, right? And those things you carry on into the.
I don't think there's any other way to learn. Like in that situation, there's no book that's gonna teach you that, right? Like there's no internship where you're gonna learn that per se, right? You had to go through the fire and kind of figure it out yourself. And I love that aspect of business. Like, hey, this person, you said he was the only person that would buy your soybeans. So he feels he's got the leverage, right? So he's trying to deploy his leverage, but you deployed your leverage and cut it. Come on.
Right. Needed, and it's the thing, like, I tell my team a lot today, I'm like, "There is always a solution, right? There's always another way, because 'cause I'm thinking about my soybean, right? I'm like, "Listen, even if my other way had been, like, I'm just burning it all in the field, I don't know, you know?
The way.
But it was another way, right? Like, I always say, like, "Until I am dead and gone, there is another solution, like, there is never an end."
No matter what, even if, like, if it's starting all over, right? Like, I forget who said it, but, like, if you don't like the way the table is set, then flip the table over, right? Like, it's so there's always another option.
Always another we've had some team members that are like, hey, they've had some issues in their lives. They're like, oh, we just want to, we want to back off and just, we're just going to part ways, right? But they've been really good team members, and I go to them like, well, and there's been two incidences of this over the last 3 years, and well, what do you need? Like, what's happening now? How we can kind of modify this, right? Is there something that I can do personally? Because we don't want to lose you. You're a great employee, but is there something we can do to modify this? And that's a lesson I learned from an amazing boss that I had back in California. He, when I after I had my first child, I was, there's a lot of like stuff you gotta
I'm
you're a
sure.
first time mom.
I'm sure.
Oh my gosh, I was running this huge organization, and he came to me. He goes, "What do you need? Like, how can we make this work? We don't want to lose you. How can we
Be flexible.
we're flexible. So if this, and I'm like, well, I need to work closer to home. Okay, great. We'll just work out of this office. Okay. And so it really worked. So I learned that along the way from different leaders that I've had to say, it's not always the end.
No, no, and how about those lessons that you learn from leaders, good and bad, right? Like, you learn good and bad things, and then you learn from the people who, you're serving, the people that work for you. Just like the person that, your boss that said, "What do you need?" He doesn't know, that person doesn't know what you need in that situation, but I bet now the next time that they encounter it, like, they're prepared, right? Because the policy is now shifted or been flexible. For us, I remember hiring a writer, and she traveled, and she's like, I'm not really the person that wants to come into the office every day. I work best on a mountainside. I like to hike up there and type and get my work done." And I said, Okay, show me." And she did. I thought, well, great. Why would I ever want to force you to come into this office? So for probably 2 years, we'd get on the phone, about, "Where are you?" "Oh, I'm in Arizona." "Oh, I'm in Colorado." "Oh, I'm in Maine." I'm like, "Holy crap. All your work's done." So it's like,
Probably done at a higher level because she can be in her space, right?
she's fulfilled in her life. How great is that, that I get to help that? Of course I would wanna do that.
We do this thing, we have a co-care agreement. So I have a coach that we work with, but I've been working with Kristen Shennerland with Koi Coaching. She's local here. I met her at Leadership Sarasota.
Okay.
And I've been working with her since before I started the business. She's really one of the reasons why I had the why I was ready to launch, right? I mean, she just helped me so much to see the potential that we had. And anyway, so she does a well-being. We meet 7 times a year with the entire team, a well-being coaching. So we started working on it this year as a pilot program. So now it's going to impact what we do in 25. They get a whole booklet and all that is a co-care agreement. And basically, so when you get hired with us, we give you this co-care agreement, and it basically tells us what you need to be successful as an individual, not just professionally, but also personally, right? So I have one employee that in her co-care agreement said, I really would like to work 1 week a year from Texas, from my hometown, because my mom lives there. She's getting older, and I remember living in California and having to spend all of my vacation time in Alabama, right? Because I wanted to see my family. So I didn't really get a vacation. I wanted to spend it with family. So I understood that. Like, I'm like, of course she can work there 1 week a year. Like, and so we have those conversations in advance and then on an annual basis as well, of course. But you come in saying, here's what I need, right? Like
Love it.
one of my things is I like doing walks with my youngest son in the evening. Right now it's kind of hard because it gets so dark, but that's one of the things that fulfills me, right? So my entire team knows that, and they'll ask me about it, like, and they're just, yeah, yeah, and they keep me honest, if you will, in what I need for myself.
That's really cool, and it's an idea, obviously, I'm sitting down with business owners from all different industries and walks of life, and I'll steal a nugget here or there, and that's one I'm gonna take. Last month we had, Dean Burnside, who owns, Good News Pest Solutions, yeah, and he said that they have, uh, VTO, volunteer paid time off, and that they give it to all their employees where I think it's 8 or 12 hours a year, you can go out and volunteer and you're getting paid by the company. And I thought, "Oh, that's a really cool idea." So I'm stealing that one, and I'm stealing this idea. I like that.
When you're done with all that, you're gonna have like the greatest company. You're like, I'm just taking all these little nuggets.
A good business owner will steal good ideas from anybody, right? Okay, so, uh, California, you're raised in Alabama, California for school, right? Come back?
I stayed in California for 17 years at the
Wow.
farm. So I
That's
sold the farm. So I was there for about 2.5 years on the farm, sold the farm, went back to California, and was in California a total of 17 years, right outside San Francisco. It's where I got into the home building world. I worked for a home builder that's no longer around now, that the recession got them a few years back, Standard Pacific Homes. They were purchased by Cal Atlantic, Lynn Lennar, kind of all rolled in. But I did community management out there. So I really learned all aspects of development. And but like I've worked in the legal side of it. I've worked in the sales side. I've worked in the community relations side, the construction side. I mean, I was never the person, building the walls. But I've done all of the elements of what you needed to do to, from the planning side of it. And so I was in California there for 17 years. We had our oldest son, who's 15 now, and he was about 2.5 at the time. My husband had an opportunity to go to DC, to Washington, DC, to work at the headquarters of the U.S. Marshals. And it's just something we couldn't pass up. And we were kind of probably a little restless in California, getting ready, now that I had a child, how can we get a little closer to my family in Alabama? So we made the move, and I took a position with an Agrihood. Do you know what an Agrihood is?
I do not. Okay, yeah.
When you hear it, you're going to understand when I tell you it's a master plan community with a farm.
Of course. Agrihood. It makes complete sense, yeah.
And so it was one of the early Agrihoods in the country. So we were kind of leading the way on. We made a lot of mistakes, but we had a ton of success. We learned a lot along the way, and so I took a position with them and loved it. And then the one of the employees from there came down to Lakewood Ranch, and I followed her. So a mentor of mine. So I followed her, and that's how I got to Lakewood Ranch. And with the developer there, and was with SMR, Schrader Manatee Ranch, the developer of Lakewood Ranch, for 6 years, and doing community relations and amenity work. And then after Waterside Place launched, I decided to, one, adopt a baby. Child. I don't know that that's something I would recommend to, like, yes, adoption, but starting a business when you have it's hard stuff, yeah. But thank God we had that opportunity to do that.
Sounds like you like the challenge though, so that's okay.
Yeah, I do like challenges. And I like puzzles,
Yeah,
kind of like,
yeah. Well, that
does all this fit?
well, starting a business with an infant, that's quite the puzzle. Yeah.
But when Waterside Place was launched, and the farmers market, I created all of that for Lakewood Ranch. And when that was successful and ready to go, I decided it was time for me to, spread my wings. And I had this idea that the same thing I was doing at Lakewood Ranch, that other developers and builders might need. And the first day, February 28th, 2022, um, I had my first client meeting, and by the end of that week, they had already signed a contract. The second week, I had another client, and yeah, it just kept rolling from there. And today, yeah, what did I say, 2 years, 9 months later, we're at 50 employees and 7 open positions right now. So anybody, check OnPlace.life if you.
OnPlace.life. That's right. That's right.
We are actively hiring, and it's weird. We go through these waves of hiring. We call it waves, and the entire team, we're in evolution right now. It's just the OnPlace evolution. We just keep going, and we're like, it's not a tsunami. It's a wave. We are riding this thing.
Do it.
So yeah, it's been a dream come true.